Grand Rising and good morning to all of you out there. I got to say happy Friday Eve. And before I throw it over to my co-host, Big O, I just have to send some amazing birthday love to two amazing women in my life and out here in the community. First off, my grandmother, Ruth Holiday. Happy 81st birthday, Grandma. I love you to the moon and back. And secondly, to a community icon. We've been talking about her on this show oftentimes. Happy 93rd birthday, Dr. Maxine Mims. Woo! What a celebration. Just want to give you all of the love right now. So many in community. Enjoy your presence and love all of the legacy that you built. We thank you so much for all of your work out here in community. What's up, Bo?
You gotta send the pictures over. You got a lot of birthdays. Put them on screen.
Oh, thank you. So great. That was a great clip of Dr. Maxine Mims right there that you had. I appreciate that.
Yeah, people can. We tweeted out, and actually the hashtag was Tacoma Black History last week when Dr. Marcia Tate Arunga actually told the story of how Dr. Maxine Mims started the Evergreen College Tacoma campus years ago. 7 people around her dining room table.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what a legacy. And she is still here thriving every third Friday, doing critical conversations and just bringing her voice and legacy, information, her knowledge to the people, man. It's beautiful.
Yeah, we got a full show today. We're joined by Sean Good of Choose 180. When I saw the Supreme Court ruling that came out that basically said that police can't arrest you for simple possession anymore, I thought that I'd reach out to Sean Good and see if he has something to say. It's like a trick question because Sean always has something to say. So we're joined by him. We're also joined by funny man and comedian, Mr. Nate Jackson. So you guys, when I saw him on Tuesday in the latest episode of Young Rock, where Nate Jackson plays Junkyard Dog. He also has Nate Jackson's Super Funny Comedy Club down in Tacoma, Washington. We'll be checking in with him. And Julia Jesse, Clapback Culture. Julia is joining us. There's another episode of Clapback Culture tonight at 7 o'clock. Julia is joined by her co-host, Mike Davis of the South Seattle Emerald.
Oh, man. Great lineup today. I'm excited, man, on this amazing, beautiful Friday Eve.
All right. A few headlines today before we get to Sean, because he always has some it's always a good conversation. So we'll keep the headlines a little bit short, but something that was important. It was a milestone here in the state of Washington yesterday. This is by Elise Takahama at the Seattle Times. More than 5,000 people have now died from COVID-19 in Washington state. And I think when it's the new math or the old math, but if there's 500,000 people, over 500,000 now that have passed away from COVID, 10% of 500,000 is 50,000. So 1%, 5,000. So about 1% maybe of all the deaths of COVID-19 in America coming here from the Evergreen State.
Wow. I mean, we were talking about this just the other day, how, the measures that are put in place by Governor Inslee are really helping to keep our state's numbers really low. That right there showcases it. But here we are marking another milestone with COVID deaths, man.
Right. And of the 5,000, about 1,400 of them from King County and about another 500 each in Pierce and Snohomish. What was interesting, though, is that Yakima County had like over 500 deaths there in Yakima County. And early on, that was a real big hotspot in the state. A lot of the farm workers there were catching COVID. And actually, remember, we did a story at one of the farms that was fined $2 million by the state for failure to take proper precautions to protect their workers over there. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. And real quick here to the national headlines. The Capitol today is on edge. The legislators, man, the House, they didn't even come to work today. They stayed late last night because the Capitol is apparently under threat.
On Capitol Hill, it's in a state of alert due to new threats of violence. Extra security has been added, and today, House lawmakers chose not to meet in person. Why? As a precaution, because today, March 4th, is an important date for pro-Trump extremists, because it was once America's actual inauguration day. Some believe that the former president will retake office later today.
This week, the FBI warned January's violent attack, which killed 1 police officer and injured dozens more, was unlikely to be an isolated incident. Chris Van Cleve is along the security perimeter outside the Capitol for us this morning. Chris, good morning to you. What's it like where you are?
Well, good morning. Security is once again ramping up outside the Capitol. In fact, staff have been encouraged to work from home if they can, and the Capitol Police have moved to an all-hands-on-deck footing for at least the next few days. The nation's capital on high alert this morning after a federal intelligence bulletin warned a group of militia violent extremists discussed plans to take control of the U.S. Capitol and remove Democratic lawmakers on or about March 4th.
We do have some concerning intelligence. That intelligence is law enforcement sensitive. We've taken immediate steps to let the National Guard as well as our workforce know what to expect.
Acting Capitol Police Chief Yogananda Pittman briefed lawmakers yesterday.
We know that the threats are through the roof.
Facebook confirms it is monitoring efforts to attempt or coordinate actions tied to a QAnon conspiracy theory that former President Trump will rise to power today. These latest threats come as confusion continues over the timeline of the January 6th attack. Major General William Walker, the commander of the D.C. National Guard, told senators he received a frantic call at 1:49 p.m. that day from then Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund.
Chief Sund, his voice cracking with emotion, indicated that there was a dire emergency at the Capitol, and he requested the immediate assistance of as many available National Guardsmen that I could muster.
But he said it took more than 3 hours to get the Defense Department to approve sending troops to the Capitol.
Seconds mattered, minutes mattered.
Walker blamed the unprecedented and slow response on the Pentagon.
The Army senior leaders did not think that it looked good, it would be a good optic. They further stated that it could incite the crowd.
He was asked if that same consideration had been made last summer when the Guard was also called to respond to Black Lives Matter protests.
It was never discussed the week of June. It was never discussed July 4th when we were supporting the city. It was never discussed August 28th when we supported the city.
This intelligence confusion appears to be continuing past the 6th. Earlier this week, the House Sergeant-at-Arms sent an email saying it appeared the threats aimed at today were on the decline. Less than 24 hours later, new alerts saying those threats are back. Anthony?
Chris, thank you.
Yeah, so we see right there, and we see that the head of the D.C. National Guard, he said that optics wasn't really an issue when the other protests were there. They're not saying them on air, but those are the protests around the value of Black lives, where people were there in Washington, D.C., and the National Guard was called in. But they were worried about optics there on January 6th, and that's a 3-hour delay in dispatching the National Guard to the U.S. Capitol.
Yeah, I mean, and he made such valid points right there. And honestly, again, I mean, we've been saying it that what we saw happen on January 6th, it's like really was like peeling an onion, you know, like, hey, more and more stuff is going to come out. We know this in terms of who was there, how they got, you know, help to be able to storm the Capitol in the ways that they did. And a lot of this stuff is coming out. And I love that he was very clear there, even without naming it. We know exactly what he's talking about here. And again, you know, how do you compare the two situations when you're talking about whatever optics are? Ultimately, you know, folks were saying this is why it looked like an inside job. And we're going to see how this plays out today, man, or maybe over the next couple of days, though.
Inside job. Yeah, I mean, it's there was definitely a lot of it just is what it. We'll wait for the official report, but I mean, come on, you know, like a 3-hour delay for National Guard in the Capitol is being breached. But yeah, I see that in the green room we've got Sean Good. Sean's back. Are you ready, Sean? Sean's always ready. All right. Oh yeah, can you please bring in Sean Good from Choose 180? Good morning.
Happy Thursday,
Yeah, man, it's good to see you. Thank you for taking time to join us this morning here on the Morning Update Show. Before we hop into it, it's always some new viewers that are checking in. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell people briefly about Choose 180?
Certainly. Thanks for the opportunity and the privilege to be able to be in space with you. My name's Sean Good. Most importantly, I'm married to the most amazing woman in the world, my gift from God, my angel from heaven, the love of my life, woman of my dreams. I'm the father of 2 teenagers, and I steward Choose 180 as our executive director. We're a nonprofit that works to transform systems of injustice while supporting the young people who are disproportionately harmed by those systems.
All right. So we want to jump into this. The state Supreme Court made a ruling, I believe it was 5-4 the other day, where they said that simple possession is no longer like illegal. So basically, if you're in possession of a drug, not necessarily using the drug or selling the drug, but if you're in possession of a drug, then that's no longer illegal. And I reached out to you and wanted to hear your thoughts about this.
Yeah. I think this originated from a case in Eastern Washington, I believe, that they dubbed "Not My Pants" case, where there was a woman who was found to have a small amount of methamphetamine in her pocket, and she said that, well, these are my friend's pants that I borrowed, and I didn't know that they were in there. And so essentially what the Supreme Court said is that you can't assume that somebody knows that they have drugs on them, and that assuming that they're guilty because they have the drugs on them isn't enough. And so you can no longer get picked up off of simple possession. And which, candidly, like, think about how many people have been incarcerated for simple possession of marijuana, right? And now we see what happens when you're able to monetize it, make money off of it, and have white folks own it. Then you can all of a sudden, it's legal, right? And we historically criminalize addiction, criminalize behavioral health, criminalize adolescence. We do a lot of things to be able to make sure marginalized folks stay disproportionately distant from positionality and power. And this is just one building block getting knocked out the way to help make sure there's greater equity and less disparity in the criminal legal system.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, Trey.
Well, I just was going to say, you always bring such a candid point to the show. Thank you. I'm so glad you're here, brother. But, ultimately, I think that, I want to ask you, how do you think this is going to play out in terms of the Black community? I mean, oftentimes we talk about how, we still have brothers and sisters that are locked up for these small possession charges and misdemeanors, sometimes moving into other charges. But I just want to ask you how you think that this kind of knocking this barrier down may play out in the Black community.
Trey, and I know better than to use the word BIPOC on the show. So Big O and Trey, like, I will not say BIPOC, I promise. We'll talk specifically Black community. Here's the thing, right? What these trace amounts of drugs have been used is to add to charges, right? So let's say somebody gets picked up because they're carrying a gun, right? And they have trace amounts of a drug on them. Then they'll get an enhancement to that charge. And so if they get sentenced, then that sentence will be increased because they had this trace amount of drugs on them. Or it'll be used as an opportunity to stop and search people to be able to suggest that they may have something. So let's say somebody's smoking weed, right? Or they see somebody, engaging in use of another drug, right? Then they'll stop that person, then they'll search that person and see if there's some other crime that they may have been complicit in order to be able to arrest them, incarcerate them, and stigmatize them. And so the hope is that by removing legality around simple possession, then it'll decrease the number of times that people in Black community are stopped for engaging in drug use. My suspicion is that historically, when things like this have been put into place, there's been other mechanisms that have begun to rise up to continue the criminalization of Black bodies. And I'm very interested to see what the law enforcement response is going to be now that this tactic is being removed from their repertoire. Because historically, when one of the tactics is removed, something else then replaces it to continue this pattern of criminalizing Black bodies. And some of the arguments that law enforcement are currently using to warn people of the dangers of this Supreme Court decision are things that are ridiculous, because they often operate from this supposition that the only way to get people access to services is to first incarcerate them and then require them to get drug rehabilitation based upon their sentencing agreement. And we know good and well that there's many ways to engage people in community to get them connected to services without criminalizing them first.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that. And I'll circle back to that, but I wanted to just be very blunt about this. Do you think that there's a big shift in laws and the ways that addiction and drug use is being addressed here in the state of Washington, because this is impacting white people When, of course, we lived through the crack epidemic there in the Central District of Seattle, and there was zero tolerance or understanding all throughout the whole criminal justice ecosystem, from the police to the courts to the jails. We saw people get mandatory minimums and some everything else. We see that when it comes to heroin and methamphetamines, a lot of times you can actually go to a police station and be like, hey, man, I need help. Here's my, here's my drugs. In some cases, you're not going to get arrested. Even before the Supreme Court ruling, we find that there's a different attitude to where before with crack, it was like these people are criminals. They need to be locked up. Now we find with heroin use and methamphetamine use and a lot of other drugs that white people use, that there's a lot more tolerance. These people need help. They're sick. How can we help them?
Yeah.
And now with the Supreme Court ruling, and I only say that in talking to some law enforcement people from the East Side yesterday, we talk about our community here and this and that. I'm talking to law enforcement on the East Side, and where they're encountering white drug users, right? And they're like, well, what can we do? This is the law now. And so do you think that there's been a pattern towards shifting law and shifting narratives here as we see the color of drug users kind of change?
Oh, good and well that so if you look at the criminalization of crack use, right, and that falling in line with that tough on crime era, which is really code for how do we criminalize Black and brown bodies and make sure that we can continue to perpetuate this oppression of a people, so that way they don't rise beyond the circumstances that we want people to be limited to, right? And if we even go back to that tough on crime era where they were criminalizing the use of crack in the way that they did, and compared that to cocaine use, which was largely being used by white folks that wasn't being criminalized at the same level at all, that some of the narrative that was pushed forward was even supported by folks from our own community, where we felt like you could arrest your way out of addiction. And that folks from our community felt like we needed to arrest and lock up the people who were bringing drugs into our community and leveraging the same racist ideas that were being put upon us by a white dominant culture and beginning to embody those ourselves. Now, fortunately, we've grown beyond that, and I hope we continue to evolve beyond that. But as it pertains and speaks to King County, Martin Luther King Jr. County, and Washington State in particular, absolutely. When dominant culture begins to suffer, people respond dramatically different. I mean, we don't even need to look at drug use to be able to see that. We can look at this current pandemic of COVID-19 and recognize that the impetus for the immediate response was in large part an elderly population who was suffering disproportionately as a result of the spread of this disease. And we know that there's certain people in this country that are entitled to get older because of the benefits that they receive and the disproportionate medical and healthcare that folks get in this country and the lack of those types of resources. So this isn't limited to drug use. It isn't limited to this particular Supreme Court decision. When inequities begin to be put upon dominant culture, then dominant culture responds to make sure that the ground can be level again. So that way their kids can have opportunities that Black children and Black families haven't had for centuries in this country.
Right. And now going back to one of the things where we saw some people in law enforcement come out and make statements. A lot of law enforcement agencies just said, hey, we're not going to be arresting, and kind of left it at that. There were others, though, who said, and it's hitting back on your earlier point, that said that this is dangerous. This law is dangerous because that arrest a lot of times changes the trajectory of someone who might have, I don't know, started off with a gateway drug and now they lead up to something else or anything else. They're saying that taking away the police ability to arrest there might basically lead to someone doing more drugs and possibly going down a further path of illegality.
Omari, if in this country, the best response we have to people who are suffering through addiction is to incarcerate them as an incentive for them to get treatment, then we are not actually attempting to win a war. We are simply engaging in a fight. And there's a big difference between those two scenarios. It is ridiculous to assume that law enforcement or the court system is the appropriate gateway to supportive services to help people commit to a new direction for their life. We don't need to arrest people for them to get treatment, but what we do need to do is resource treatment in a way that is on par or therefore exceeds what we're resourcing law enforcement currently in our community. This goes back to the whole divest and invest conversation that we've been holding and uplifting over these past, almost, dozen months at this point, But if we are going to continue to limit the types of ways that law enforcement can engage community, then we should begin to limit the number of law enforcement officers we have, and then take those resources and begin to pour them into the alternatives that would truly help people live free of addiction. And I'll also say that there are many people who are locked up, and not because they have addictions, but because that they've been using drugs. And not every person that uses drugs is using drugs as an addict. I want to make sure that's clear as well, because we legalize nicotine, we legalize alcohol, we legalize marijuana. There's a variety of things that are legal that people use with moderation, and that people use in an addictive way. I mean, for goodness sakes, look at the way we eat, like the food that goes into our bodies. And, candidly, in food deserts, there's more McDonald's than there are healthy grocery stores. That seems problematic to me too.
Absolutely, brother. And, this is why I think so much of the discussion has really been about elevating the solutions that are really on the ground. I want to ask you a little bit about tertiary charges. Oftentimes we see kind of a pathway, right? It becomes about drugs, but then we also see how other charges get tacked onto that. I want you to be able to speak a little bit to how maybe this new change will maybe direct things a little bit differently, because oftentimes we've seen it play out, I think, in Black communities a lot, where, it may start with one thing, and then the next thing you know, the charges get stacked on that individual. How will this maybe change the course of that action?
Well, it can no longer be the reason why a law enforcement officer engages somebody in community. Where historically, let's say that you were out on your porch smoking weed, and a police officer could roll by, see you smoking weed, and then stop and have a conversation with you, ask you for your ID, run your ID in their database, see if there was any past history of involvement, see if you had any current warrants that were outstanding. Then, and maybe give them just cause, depending on the way you responded to, ask to request another search. And if you were to acquiesce to that search, they may discover something else. And so the whole thing just compounds one after the next, after the next. And this isn't to say that that people who are using drugs are also engaged in other illicit behavior. But what it is to say is that there's a pattern of criminalizing behavior in Black community, and that every time one door closes to, that limits the ability for their behavior to be criminalized in our community, another door seems to open to create access for that perpetuation of abuse to continue. And so, Trey, I'm excited that this is a pause, but I'm very much aware of the fact that this way of being is perverted, and that you can change laws, but it doesn't necessarily change the biases that live within those who are serving in communities that they're not connected to or have experience living in.
Right. And what does this now mean for people who are serving time right now on a possession charge? Do you know?
Yeah. Oh, from what I understand, it's that now they're looking at a backlog of cases where if you were arrested for simple possession, that charge needs to be vacated. And if that charge was added to additional charges, that those charges will be vacated and your sentence should be shortened as a result of that. Some questions that that I don't have the answer to are things like, well, if that was the primary reason why you were engaged, right? So if they engaged you for simple possession and then they discovered something else, is the entire case thrown out because the simple possession's off the books, and then there's no longer a reason that the engagement would have happened in the first place? Those are some of the things that I'm not really sure of, that there's other experts that can be brought on to have those conversations. But it's definitely going to benefit those that have been locked up with simple possession as part of whatever their sentencing agreement was.
Right. And just a few other things here before we let you go. Last time we talked to you, we talked about the amendment around the 3 strikes law, where I think, second degree armed robbery is no longer a 3 strike, and that they were reviewing cases there. You got any update around some of these things that actually the prosecutor here, Satterberg, was pushing for down in Olympia?
Yeah, they're still in the legislative process right now. And so I know that there was a big win with the House bill that would prohibit young people from the similar legislative amendment that was passed in the city of Seattle and King County last summer that required young people to have access to a public defender before they acquiesce their rights. I know that passed the House down at the state level. And so we're excited about that. and the next steps that are there. But yeah, many of those things are still in the legislative process, and we should be seeing how they shake out in the very near future.
Well, Sean, you always bring a real robust perspective to this. I want to ask you quickly, because we know that you are so connected to the ground. Does this new law, does it change any of the ways that you're kind of addressing some of your approaches with young people out there that are suffering from some of these kind of criminal charges in their world?
Trey, it's a great question. We typically, when we support young people, we're not looking at what it is that they've done, right? Like, that's not the concern. We're not spending any of our time really focused on what they've been accused of. We spend all of our time focused on the possibility of a young person and not the problems that they've been stigmatized as. So as we look at it from a development perspective, if we're engaging a young person that's been caught up on a simple possession, we're spending very little time talking about what they may have possessed. We're spending all the time talking about where it is they want to go, what it is that they aspire towards, what are the right choices, right supports they need to make, and what needs to get left behind. There's so many people in the world that are going to look at a young person whose behavior has been criminalized and want to point fingers and say that's who they are. Organizations like ours that are led by Black folks, that are serving Black, Brown, Indigenous folks throughout the community, have the responsibility to not fall in line with those what I would call racist practices, the practices of assimilationism, and to really stand the line of being anti-racist and lift up all of our young people by the assets that they carry and not by the things that they may have done.
Absolutely.
All right. Before we let you go, Sean, if you could tell everybody, how can they catch up with you on Choose 180?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And real quick, I want to say one thing before I tap out. My energy is a little bit different today. Before I hopped on, I found out that one of our dear elders and community leaders, Iman Benjamin Smith, Brother Ben, passed away. And it hit me real heavy. So I'm bringing that into the space. And I want to just let you know, like, I apologize for not having my regular juice with me today. But like, I'm carrying the weight of that. This man was a mentor. He was a leader. Like, I remember when I was really early on in my youth development career, he would speak to me about the significance of Black identity. I remember one time he gave me a book to read to my son that had stories of Black leaders throughout history. So that way my son could carry these narratives forward. And so like, it speaks to that his loss is significant. And it just speaks to how important it is that the rest of us continue to step up and lead in significant ways, not just ways that like where people pay attention and say you're significant, but like in all the ways where people and doing the things that are unseen, where you're loving and you're serving unapologetically and really pouring into your community. So that way young people and future generations have a way to see themselves that's not through the lens of the oppressor or through the lens of the oppressed, but through the lens of being victorious kings and queens with a history of survival and thriving in a country that has regularly done all that they could to hold us back and keep us from progressing. So I just wanted to leave with that. Folks can find us at iChoose180 on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, as well as at choose180.org. Feel free to hit us up there. And most importantly, y'all, Converge matters. So please, 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 please donate to Converge. Sign up as a monthly donor, a first-time donor. Get yourself in one of them. I think Big O and Trey got like a platinum class where you get like a free hoodie and a mug and like, oh, come over to your house and bake you a cake. I don't really know all the things that entail because I don't make that kind of money. But like, please, y'all, give to Converge because platforms like this matter and organizations like ours and voices like mine don't get a chance to speak up everywhere. But O and Trey continue to create that space. So please support Converge.
Right on, man. And we're sorry for your loss and for loss of community. And thank you for sharing that news and information with our viewers. And man, just want to let you know, man, we appreciate you, Sean. And thank you for coming on. And I don't go and bake a cake, but I definitely can get on the grill.
Don't worry. We got some extra stuff for the platinum class. But hey, brother, even if you're not there, you're here with us. We appreciate your support all the way.
All right, y'all. Love y'all.
Love you.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Sean Good.
Always coming with that fire. It's crazy because, when he talked about his energy being off, I'm like, you still got the facts, man. I mean, ultimately, what I love about our platform is that it really does showcase the experts that are on the ground all the time, every day, really in the trenches, working with young people, working with elders, working in all of these sectors. That's what makes me happy every day to be here, man. And I'm glad that, he's able to bring his brilliance right here to this platform.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times when we talk about the Supreme Court ruling, um, man, it's we saw uh, a lot of these laws were used specifically for the criminalization of black people. And that's not letting crack dealers off the hook.
Right.
People who came into our neighborhood and intentionally sold poison to our young people and everything else that comes along with that. You know what I'm saying? I'm kind of separating here with people who were users and actual people who ran these drug operations.
Yeah.
And even that's what the law here is addressing is not it's still illegal to sell drugs. It's still illegal if the police find you using drugs. It's not illegal to be in possession of drugs. And there's quite a few cases, man, where things have been planted on people as well. And that's where someone ended up getting their charge because something was planted. They were in possession of something. And so, there's been so many wrongs in our community. I don't know if they'll ever be made right. You had all these houses taken during weed and seed when we talk about the crack era and weed and seed, and it's a lot. But we see these laws changing. They're becoming more humane and everything else because let's be honest, for years people didn't see humanity in black drug users. People ain't even see no humanity in black homeless people. But of course, people see humanity in themselves, and so. It's different when somebody black is using crack and crack is ravaging their neighborhood in the Central District. It's much different in some of these other cities, municipalities, and counties when the people who the root of these issues now are white people. And a lot of these people who are on drugs and everything else, their parents are influential people. There's a state legislator, I forget his name. They did a special on him. He's down in Olympia, and his son is recovering from years of being addicted to heroin. And so there's a whole different face of humanity that's put around the issue of drugs and marginalization when they don't look black.
Yeah, your point is just spot on. Oh, and ultimately, this is something that now is being experienced by a wide variety of Americans. And really, it's putting a spotlight on it because it's always been there, right? At the end of the day, what Sean was just talking about in terms of how cocaine was, not as criminalized as crack was, and yet it was really the very same drug. And ultimately, when we talk about how it was brought into the Black community very intentionally and strategically to break down a lot of the movements that were building up around Black liberation, ultimately that's what started the gang wars. I mean, there is a huge legacy and history around using drugs, particularly in the Black community, and all of that was really a part of what we talk about in terms of the system. The government was, integral in all of that, in bringing those drugs over from Vietnam. So there's just a huge history of, really, again, attacking the Black community in particular with regard to drug use. And I'm glad that we're able to spotlight that when we're talking about these cases, because you're spot on, in terms of now, all of a sudden, folks are realizing, wait a minute, this is hitting our communities, and what are we going to do? Yeah. It is. It's always been there. You know what I mean? You can't sweep it under the rug or just pay for, your loved one to go to a treatment center, a fancy treatment center, and then they're okay. Ultimately, these issues around addiction affect many people.
Yeah, there it is. All right. So we got Mr. Nate Jackson just popped in. Yeah, I wonder if he's using that prepaid internet cards down there in Tacoma. We're going to take a short break right now. When we come back, we got Mr. Nate Jackson. And after that, we've got Julia Jesse. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
I did it for the city. I did it for the love. I did it for the people. I did it for us.
Back on this rap ish. I ain't even broke a sweat, homie. This practice. Pondering my next move. Staring at my track list. Hope I ain't miss my window. Praying like a Baptist. Seattle's own. Tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers, and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. My name is Omari Salisbury, joined by Treyana Holiday. And it looks like we've got Nate Jackson back there in the green room. Oh, yeah, please bring in the funny man himself, Mr. Nate Jackson. Hey.
Hey, man, I decided I'm going to do today's whole interview with my arms up like this. This way, everybody remembers me, and they don't just be thinking this was a normal segment.
we just glad to be able to hear you and see you good.
Hey man, I don't know what was wrong with Mark's service, but here I am live, fresh in the flesh. Bars.
Oh, what's up, brother?
Good to see you, Nate. Hey, so but before we talk about it, I know that you're starring at your own comedy club this weekend. But before we go there, you know, I gotta bring this up. You know, of course, you have a reoccurring role there on Young Rock. NBC's Young Rock, you play the junkyard dog. There's an image of you right there. And man, you know, I was kind of heartbroken, bro. You know, Yao gave you the ham. You know what I'm saying? You bailed on Big Mama in there with the wrestling match. I was like, oh, say it ain't so, Nate. Say it ain't so, junkyard dog.
Sometimes a dog got to look out for his own bone.
Oh man.
Yo, yeah, it's really dope. You know, Young Rock is it really just is a good show. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And it's real entertaining. And it's kind of interesting how much detail actually given into the family business over there. You know what I'm saying? It was crazy to me. I was watching you and I was like, man, because Rock's mother-in-law was a wrestling promoter and promoting and putting the shows together. I was like, man, Nate Jackson know that business. You know, it's not wrestling, but comedy promotion. Yeah.
It was it's actually like on a macro level, like just for me personally, I was really blown away by the episode. Because here's the thing, right? Like you film, but you film when it's your time to shoot. Other than that, you're not on set. So I'm watching it and I'm looking at all the other scenes that everybody else was doing, and they're all thorough. And so I'm just really excited to see. Plus, they shot every scene with, say, 2 cameras, multiple times. So they have a lot of angles. They have a lot of coverage, and I'm blown away at how much screen time they're giving me. Like there could be 6 people talking and I'd be standing right there. Like they have me on the screen. You hear me? They have other angles they could have used. They have me on that screen. I was on the screen for like 15 minutes out of that 22 minutes. And that's just insane to me. So I'm extremely happy. The show is the #1 show across all networks on the Tuesday night primetime slot. It's the #1 show for NBC in the last 4 years. It's the #1 show in Southeast Asia. And the ratings are just getting better and better as it garners a larger audience. So I'm really happy about that. Very happy.
Work, Nate.
Yeah, but Nate, you a star.
Proud of. Yeah, a real star out here, man. And you know what? Honestly, you know, kudos to you for bringing your energy, because that's probably why they keep you on that screen, brother, because you're making sure that you're 100% on all the time. I know that's right. Keeping the energy up.
Mr. Nate Jackson. Now it's a big deal, you know, because I'm like, man, I know that guy. You know, so like a little kid watching. I'm like, man, that's my guy.
You're right.
You don't know Junkyard Dog. Oh man, I know him. That's my guy. All right, so Nate, man, keeping track of things here. We had Mark Curry, and then after Mark Curry was the mother sucker, Michael Blackman, and now this weekend right here, we've got you, and you're starring in your own show this weekend at Nate Jackson's Super Funny Comedy Club. So now it's you on stage this weekend. What can people expect?
So here's the thing, right? This originally wasn't going to be me. This was another comedian, but that comedian booked a show on the network and isn't able to make it. So I was like, all right, who can I sub in? Who can I sub in? And my whole team was like, just do it yourself. So that's what's about to happen. I'm about to give them what I do nationally right here on my own club stage, because I'm a headliner, so it's not like it's a stretch. It's not like I'm crowning myself this because I can. This is a natural booking. You know what I mean? Like any club around the country should have me in rotation. So why wouldn't I at my own? So it's exciting, and I'm gonna bring it. Now I don't know. I haven't decided yet if I'm just gonna be loose and just go off the dome. If I decide that, then I'm about to do 5 different sets this weekend. But what I think I want to do, and y'all help me pick. Converge. Tell me if I should. Here's the other option, right? I'm thinking of doing my jokes chronologically so that you actually get like an autobiography. So it goes like all the stuff on my kid, teenager, high school, college, grown, and then this stuff I have about, the Australian experience with the young rock and all of that. And then it kind of tells a story. So it's either that or I just get some Hennessy and we have some fun.
I go for option 2 because I don't seen you do some mama jokes and talk about people outfits. And
I mean, you're just naturally funny. That's what I was saying. Even when you were introducing, Mark Curry and just being on set and on stage when he was here. I mean, you are naturally funny. I think the audience will love either one, but I just gotta say, you are a hoot, honestly, out there on the stage. So I think either one, the audience is gonna be pleased, man.
And I'll just jump in here real quick too.
Hold on. Before you jump in there, let's just pause for her saying the word hoot.
It's either hoot or resilient. So
you are a hoot, huh?
Yeah,
just for you, Nate.
Listen, we're gonna have to amend this and put hoot right over Nate's face and say it's gonna be a hoot. I bring up that like you're there in your own comedy club, not in the sense that you're not a world-class performer and entertainer and comedian, because you are literally taking your show on the road and some of the top comedy venues around the world. But it's just the fact that like it's a homecoming with COVID reopening things back up and your club opening back up. This is a great opportunity for people to come and see you. Not that you're not supposed to be there, but for us to welcome, our guy who's made such a big impression in comedy and now in acting. And so it's an opportunity for people to come out and celebrate your success in your comedy club.
Yeah, and I'm gonna do something nice too, because check it out. Traditionally, comedy shows tickets move slower on Thursday nights. So what I want to do is just let the Converge audience have some tickets. If y'all want to come down tonight, all you got to do is send your name, number, and email to info@superfunnycomedyclub.com. Send your name, number, and email to info@superfunnycomedyclub.com. Send your name, number, and email to info@superfunnycomedyclub.com. And tonight at 7:30 at the door, you're good. Come get these laughs.
Wow, how about that? Look at
Nate, thank you.
Man, Nate Jackson.
I have to figure out what I'm doing at 7:30 tonight. That's what I'm talking about, Nate.
Get your earth tones ready.
Don't be talking about earth tones, man. Right. For those of you who don't know, man, Mark Curry had me on blast all about my earth tones in my living room. Nate's trying to be funny right now. I got you, brother.
All right, Mr. Nate Jackson, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to make sure and get the word out across our viewers, everything else, man. And like I said, man, we're awfully proud of you, Nate, and what you're doing.
Great.
Man, thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Love you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
This is Nate Jackson, man. He's always got
the jokes,
good energy.
That's why I'm saying, like, either way, the audience is going to be entertained. You know what I mean? Whether he goes with option A or option B.
I've never seen the chronological Nate or what he's talking about there. All I've seen is the Nate where you better be careful what you wear to the club. As you already know. And listen, man, I don't know if my brother's going down there, but I got a reminder to put some lotion on his knuckles because it's crazy to see how good Nate can see in that dark room. Hey, what's up, them ashy knuckles over there? That's Nate Jackson, Super Funny Comedy Club, man. Let's support. This is what we need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I mean, so much love to this Converge audience for opening that up right here. Like he said, send your name, email, and phone number to info@Super Funny Comedy Club so you can get on there tonight.
All right, good stuff. We're going to take a short break right now, break number 2. When we come back, we got Julia Jesse from Clapback Culture. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Back on this rap-ish, I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list, hope I ain't miss my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own. Tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers, and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. My name is Omari Salisbury, and all he is repositioned. Are you just trying to take me off the show? Is that what it is? Keep going. Oh, you just going. You go. Oh my God. Where's Julia Jesse at? She kicking me off because it looks like it's time for Julia to come in. So
What's up? What's up, Big O? Hi, all ya. Hey, Trey.
Apparently, I'm getting kicked off set again, so I'll see you in a minute.
I don't know why Amari always feels like he needs to leave when I come through.
I mean, we got to give the audience some Black Girl Magic sprinkles. You already know what it is.
Yes,
so always good to see you on these Thursdays. Please, let's get right into it. What is going down tonight on Clapback Culture?
Girl, we have a really good show in store tonight. In fact, me and Mike Davis could not separate the topics. We had to take a little bit more time to talk about the state of Texas and Mississippi. So in tonight's show, that's going to be the focus. These states are rolling back the COVID-19 restrictions, and Texas is allowing businesses to open at 100% starting next week. So that's ridiculous, you guys. We're also seeing that these state governors are ending the statewide mask mandate, which is even more crazy. So you're going to be able to go into these businesses, bars, restaurants, nightclubs, and no one's going to be required to wear a mask. And what we're also seeing is that businesses are a little bit nervous about that because while there's no statewide mandate, businesses can still require you to wear a mask coming inside. But we've seen those anti-maskers all over YouTube and social media. I'm pretty sure they're going to get a little ballsy, if I have to say so myself. So this issue is super important. Again, me and Mike, we really want to talk about not only what this means for residents of Texas, for us as a whole country across the nation, right? And so what we do know is that a dip in the numbers does not mean that we are in the clear. Removing the mask mandate and really allowing these businesses to open up 100% is really just rolling back all the hard work that we've put in. And so this is ridiculous, you guys. I hope, that these states have purchased more ventilators and have openings for their hospital beds, because a lot of people are going to get sick, and that's just what it is. So that's what we're going to be talking about on Clapback Culture tonight. Please make sure you pull up, grab a snack, and tune in tonight, 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Because you guys know I'm on the East Coast, so I want my East Coast audience to pull up and, show up and party with us tonight.
That's right. And I'm so glad that you guys are diving deep into this issue. I know we just briefly touched on it here on the Morning Update Show. But again, I was just, honestly, the words today, I was flabbergasted, okay? I'm like, what is going on? And I think that, you know, you guys will have a lot of great angles to take because we're seeing that, again, the numbers are high in Black communities down there in those states. The fact that they're doing this, I'm just wondering how it's going to affect our Black communities. I'm glad you guys are touching deep on that tonight. My God.
A lot. It's a lot. It's a heavy hit. I mean, and both of these states are at the bottom of the totem pole when you think about residents getting the vaccine. So it's ridiculous. And we gonna clap back on Clapback Culture tonight at 7 p.m. So please pull up and come through with some feedback. You know, we always like audience interaction.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, welcome back.
Yeah, they allowed me back into the party. I'm on screen now. Right.
You know what I was gonna say, Sean? First of all, super good guest on the show. You guys know I love watching the Morning Update. But Sean, you know, he said you might bake a cake, but you know what you can do, Big O? Make some chapatos, boy. You remember? Yeah, them chapatos. No one knows about that.
When me and Julia, we were both working over in Tanzania in Dar es Salaam, and you know, no one store had everything you needed, and so we were trying to make tacos, but there's no taco shells, but there was chapati bread, and so we made our chapatos. Yeah, that's a good one. I might have to break that out. And our toast.
Those are hidden. And if we don't have like chapati bread, but we can use. They got, you know, I'm sure some international market out there got a little something, some pita bread, little spin on that, some roti, something.
You can find some chapati. Let's get it.
We were street food masters out there.
Hey, we was eating good.
All right, Julia Jesse, tonight, 7 o'clock. She's joined by Mike Davis of the South Seattle Airport for Clapback Culture. Thank you for joining us, Julia.
My pleasure, always, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, bye.
Wow, I'm so glad that they're diving on this, man. I mean, we said it even on the Morning Update Show right here. We're like, man, there's so much more to talk about. That's probably a whole show. I mean, really, it is. The fact that this is happening right now, especially for us in the Pacific Northwest. Because like you said, down in Houston, you wasn't sure if they ever closed. I'm telling you, those states down south, man, they've been doing marching to the beat of their own drum.
Well, I mean, again, and you know, it's kind of difficult here for people if you don't stay on top of it. It's kind of difficult here to understand what's going on in the rest of the country. When you talk about over 500,000 COVID deaths and 5,000 of them occurring in the state of Washington, when you talk about Seattle having the lowest COVID rate across the board of the top 30 cities in America, and King County fits right in there as well with these low rates. I mean, in other parts of the country, it's wild. It's wild how it's been impacted. Before we get out of here today, I got a little bit of news here. Where is it at? This is from the Seattle Medium. Simply Soulful Cafe is the newest business to join the Jackson Apartments Retail Pavilion. This is from SeattleMedium.com. People might know Simply Soulful down there in Madison Valley on Madison and Martin Luther King. And it says here that they are expanding. So I'm taking expanding as in they're not moving. They're opening an additional location there on Jackson Street on the iconic intersection, 23rd and Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to the team over at Simply Soulful. They have been building a real sustainable, steady business down there. I don't know about y'all, but man, if you try to hit that up on brunch during the weekend, my friend, it used to be packed before COVID. So I know that this is a great chance for them to expand. And the food is yummy, man. I mean, if you haven't tried it, please, when they are opening right there on 23rd and Jackson, give them a try.
Yeah, let's support Simply Soulful. Any last words before we get out of here today, Trey?
You know, I just want to say again, you know, as Sean Good brought up a loss in our community, I'm sending love right now to the Smith family. I mean, again, another icon in our a legacy icon in our community. And just want to recap, happy birthday to my grandmother and Dr. Maxine Mims. Man, it's Friday Eve too. Make it a good Friday Eve.
Friday Eve, man. Friday can't come fast enough. Speaking of Friday, tomorrow, man, we got a packed lineup. We've got council member Dan Strauss. Dan Strauss is going to be here talking about his Bringing Business Home program. We're checking in with Paula Sardinas of the Washington Build Back Black Alliance. I'm going to give an update of what's going on down in Olympia. We're also joined by Dre's, who has another episode of Building Black Wealth TV. I think DJ Topspin's going to start. It's Feel Good Friday.
Yeah, there we go. And it's already sounding like it's going to be feeling real good. I'm excited for tomorrow.
It'll be good tomorrow. Don't forget, tonight, 7 o'clock, Clapback Culture, Julia Jesse and Mike Davis. You can view Clapback Culture wherever you're watching the Morning Update show right now. And that being said, let me remind you to go forward in your purpose, go forward in your humanity, and until tomorrow at 11 a.m., peace.
Lift every voice and sing till earth in heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun.